I wanted to ask before I forget. In your research with the different prophecies, was there anything about what's going on now with this huge worldwide bird deaths?
I didn't catch anything specifically. I found a passage in Nostradamus, by the way, just recently, within the last couple of days, that kind of pointed to these bird deaths in a real strange passage. But not anything specific as far as the Hopi is concerned about bird deaths. But there have been very specific prophecies that I don't know if you want to get into that now or
Yeah, I actually thought about that, and one of my thoughts was to do it backwards. So yeah, let's get into some of the prophecies of the Hopi to this ending of the fourth world.
right. The Hopi, I've named it, I've come up with the term, the Hopi have a culture of a legacy of prophecy. They're a very prophetic culture. The elders have passed these specific prophecies along from generation to generation. And in the mid 20th century, these started to come to light in various ways. These prophecies of the end of what is called the fourth world. Now, we should back up a little bit and say that the Hopi consider that, we've lived in four different worlds so far. The first world was destroyed by fire, some kind of volcanism, or maybe an asteroid strike or comet or some catastrophe where the world was destroyed in a great conflagration. And the second world was destroyed by ice, kind of like an ice age. The ice packs were coming down into the southern regions, and that world was destroyed by ice. And the third world was destroyed by a great flood, and the Hopi escaped on bamboo rafts from this flood. And that's kind of a universal theme. A lot of cultures have had flood myths that the world was destroyed in a great flood. And a lot of Native American cultures have the same kind of flood myth. The Lakota have a flood myth. And so, it's very common in Native American and, basically cultures all over the world. Now, the Hopi started talking about the end of the fourth world, and some of these prophecies came to light. There was a meeting called the Hopi Hearings that the Bureau of Indian Affairs did in 1955. And it was basically supposed to go over some of the complaints that were going on the reservation, and some of the troubles that the people were having in a very basic sense about their agriculture. They do dry farming, so it's always a struggle to keep the agricultural system going. But the Hopis started, really kind of just started to open up about things, visions that they had seen about the end of the fourth world, and they were kind of disturbing visions of World War, and there would be a lot of trauma and a lot of. They said that. Well, let me just go over some of the things that they were talking about. Um, they said that there would be a lot of earthquakes at the end of the fourth world, and a lot of shakings of the world. And these were the result of the Hopi conceptualize that there are two warrior twins stationed at each of the poles, the North Pole and the South Pole. And it's interesting that they conceptualize the world as a globe and not just a flat place. But these ancient mythical warrior twins, one at the North Pole and one at the South Pole, keeps the world in its proper axis, spinning properly. And they said that at the end times, these warrior twins would kind of pull on these mythical snakes, water snakes that are wound around the pole, and they would make the pole kind of go out of its proper spinning rotation, and finally the world would completely go off its axis. And there would be the end of this world. So some of these earthquakes might be the sign of that's happening. Um, they said that at the end times there will be a lot of floods and famines and droughts and violent earth changes all over the world. That the world will be in a place, a chaotic state called Koyaanisqatsi is the Hopi word for it. The world out of balance. And the Hopi people are basically um, they do all their ceremonies in order to keep the world in balance. That's the reason why they still spend a lot of energy um, doing these ceremonies in the ancient ways, and there's a lot of physical things that they have to prepare for these ceremonies, a lot of food that they have to gather, a lot of ancient rituals that they have to perform in order to keep the ceremonial cycle going. If they did not keep if they just stopped doing their ceremonies, if they stopped doing the Kachina dances, they feel that the world will be thrown out of balance altogether, and these warrior twins would yank on the water snakes and just throw the whole world axis out of proportion and out of its proper spinning place, and the world would the fourth world would come to an end. And we see a lot of these things happening today. The terrible tsunamis that like in December 2004 that happened in Indonesia, and you can look to a lot of earth changes now. And the Hopi were predicting these hundreds of years ago, and they started to come out in the mid 20th century. These prophecies about this global catastrophe almost. It's quite a frightening thing when you think about it. What they were talking about. They talked about historical things coming to light, like they said that toward the end of the fourth world, not at the very end, but toward the end, people with white skins and sticks that struck like thunder would come to the area and completely overrun it. Of course, this happened with the coming of the white man to the New World. Really, the almost genocide of native cultures in both North and South America. Decimation of a lot of, the population a lot greater before, in pre-Columbian times than it is now. I could go over some of these. There's a lot of different prophecies. Like they said that toward the end times, huge beasts like buffalo would come, but they would have long horns, unlike buffalo. So that the coming of the longhorn cattle to the area, they said that snakes of iron would appear across the land. So this obviously is the railroads across the land. They also said that rivers of stone or black ribbons would be strung out across the land. And this happened in the 20th century. We have these asphalt highways or concrete highways, strung out across the land. These rivers of stone going across the land. Another thing, they said that a giant spider web would be strung out across the land at the end of the fourth world. So telegraph lines first, and then maybe power lines or telephone lines.
And now the internet.
And now the internet, sure, yeah. The World Wide Web is the giant spider web that is all across the land. They also said that young people with long hair would come to learn the native ways.
Oh, wow.
So this, and there was quite a bit of contention in Hopi land when, the countercultural people came from the cities and, came into the land because, the Hopi are very conservative people. And the countercultural people would come and, they would be earnest in trying to learn the ways. And yet they would use a lot of drugs, which the Hopi are not involved in to any extent. They would kind of have a libertine view of nudity and so forth. And the Hopi are not that way at all. I mean, the Hopi very much frown upon, even if young women wear shorts to a Kachina dance ceremony, that's very much frowned on. women should wear long dresses. They're conservative people, and it's like if a woman would wear a bikini to church or something like
Yeah.
that. That's the way the Hopi see the thing. I mean, this is a sacred ceremony. You're not supposed to expose yourself that way. So, there was kind of a clashing of cultures in that way. The so-called hippies were there to learn, but they left a bitter taste in a lot of Hopi people's mouths as far as their kind of libertine lifestyle. This is one of the signs of the end of the Fourth World. Another sign which came to pass this past summer, they said that the sea will turn black and a lot of the life in the sea will die. So, this Gulf oil spill, just confirmed one of the, last Hopi signs. They also said that there'll be a dwelling place in the sky at the end times, and it will crash to earth. So, you can interpret this in a lot of different ways. Maybe the shuttle disasters that we saw, this is a dwelling place in the sky crashing to earth. These signs are up for interpretation, as any prophetic sign is. Nostradamus is really perplexing at times because he speaks in these riddles about, a time in the future or times in the future. It takes a great degree of interpretation and kind of artful rendering of these signs to make meaning of them.
The second part of that would be, okay, they have the prophecies of the fourth world. Now, this is kind of a two-part question. With the talk of the prophecies of the fourth world, do they also speak on what the fifth world is going to be, or, I guess, does that have any tie-in with the end of the Mayan calendar?
Yes, they definitely believe that the fifth world will be ushered in after a time of purification, a time of great tribulation. This will be an age of peace and enlightenment and respect for Mother Earth. So they do see, almost like in the Bible, a new heaven and a new earth coming to pass. And this will be called the fifth world. Some Hopis say that there will be 7 worlds in total. But, we're kind of at the cusp of this fourth, fifth world change. A lot of people are tying like the Hopi prophecies in with the Mayan prophecies. In my new book called The Kivas of Heaven, I talk a little bit about 2012 and the correspondence between the Hopi and the Mayans. There are correspondences and there are differences too. I would say that the Mayan people can be considered as the masters of time, and the Hopi people can be considered as the masters of space. The Maya were very concerned with dates, and their calendar system was highly advanced, and for the time it was more specific and more exact than what was going on in Europe at the same time. They could chart out eclipses, lunar and solar eclipses, and the phases of Venus. They were very much involved in all these time cycles. As far as the Hopi are concerned, they weren't that concerned with specific dates or specific times. Like the Maya, of course, have this end of the 13th Baktun, the end of their long count calendar, as December 21st, 2012. But the Hopi, when you ask them about prophecy and when the fourth world will end, they just say it's going to end very soon, perhaps in our lifetime. They're not as specific as the Maya are, have a specific end date for a cycle of a 5,125 year cycle that the Maya have.